Have you been surprised when we've been having this national debate at the trauma and damage serving in the Australian Defence Force has done to individuals and their families?
No, because as a federal member of Parliament in a part of Sydney that has quite a number of veterans and those who've had suffered the greatest losses and rotations of any of the units that have served. Sadly, I know too much about this, as many Australians do, but not as much as the veterans and their families know, and not as much of those who've served themselves with others know. And we know all too well the deep wounds that are inflicted by these deployments. And that's why I make the point that when we make decisions about deployments, I think it's very important that we have a view to the long tail of support that will be necessary for those we ask to go and serve. And I can tell you that that has not been a matter that, at least at a technical level, has been before governments in the past, and it's certainly one I intend to be in front of us should we, God forbid, ever be in a position where we'd have to consider a deployment in the future. But we need to understand this. I mean, over the last 20 years, our deployments in Afghanistan and Iraq have seen a whole new generation of veterans. Department of Veterans Affairs, who I pay credit to today, the RSL, I pay credit to them also, are dealing with a very different set of challenges to the previous generation. Young families, widowed families, fatherless families. A whole new generation of service is now seeking that support. Now, as Darren says, those who serve in the majority of cases have their experience and do make that transition and go on to have very successful lives and making great contributions. But there are some for whom the burden has proved to be overwhelming. And that's where we need to take that action to support them. And we are, and we lift our work rate on this every single year.
Prime Minister, National Cabinet today, this war footing, as your people have described it.
I'm keen to address the issues of veterans first. I'm happy to move to the other issues if there are other questions on veterans.
War's not new. So are you going to put any programs in asking people or helping people before they join the Defence Force about this could be the outcome?
That is exactly the process I was talking about before. One of the big changes we have now made is that everybody who now serves in the Australian Defence Forces, when they join, and that includes the process of joining, but particularly when they join, we begin the process then of preparing them also for their life after their service. Now, that is not something that was happening 10 years ago. It was not something that was happening 20 years ago and 30 years ago. That is a new initiative of our government to do that. It's recognising that people will serve for a period of time. And when you serve during that period of time, you will confront things and experiences that are not things that you would normally encounter in your normal civilian life. And there will be services and supports available to you, and it will assist you transition to your life after your service. Now, just while I was up in the resources industry up in the Pilbara, I met quite a few ex-service people and who have found working in that resources industry with that team and mission environment something they felt very comfortable with. That is a fairly positive transition that they find. When they defence veterans go and work in other industries, it's much more of a change. So I think these processes are new, but I think they're quite significant. And it is our hope, by making those changes, that veterans in the future will leave the service far better prepared than they ever have before. You may not know this, but prior to, I think it was 2017, I think, Liz, that prior to that, Departments of Veterans Affairs were not able to know who'd served. And so actually knowing who veterans in our community are has been a challenge. In many cases, there are veterans who are suffering in silence because they're not known to be veterans to the department. They will only be known as veterans when they come forward and seek support. Now, that makes it a challenge to reach out to veterans. And so we've worked with the RSLs, we've worked through the Veterans Employment Program, with the Veterans Recognition Programs. And that has been a way of drawing veterans in so we can engage with them and let them know the supports and services there. All of this is new. All of this is new. So I think there are a lot of positive changes here. But I think what we're dealing with right now is we see the number of presentations increasing, the demand for veteran support increasing. Of course, it's a function of the deployments over the last 20 years. And that is the challenge that the government is dealing with now. And I think we're dealing with it very positively.